recording. We've the vision statement and mission statement, and we finalized the date for the 26th for our workshop, and we're talking a little bit about committees. So thank you. Great. So take a look at that, and I'll try to find it while people are talking and put it in the chat where you can sign up.
It's in the chat. It's in the chat now, yeah.
Karen, thank you so much. Okay, we've actually moving along. I'm a little bit flustered, but now we're back on track. So, Dan, I think I'd like to put you up the DOT Planning Partnership Initiative a little bit. I know that you sent some more information, and it's a big topic. And would you like to share a little bit about what you've learned and what you're thinking? I'll put myself on mute.
Well, let me just ask, can people hear me all right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's interesting that, I don't know if folks saw Jenna's email right before the meeting. She sent a link to Maine Department of Transportation. And it's the same initiative that I had put in the agenda, the PPI, which they call the Project Planning Initiative. They have something called a Municipal Planning Initiative, which is very similar. And basically, it looks to me like initiative is one way that we could get some of our local road funded. Route 127 project is, as far as I can tell, it's fully funded, and it's on schedule, but it's not going to be completed for at least 3 years. They are proposing not just the culvert work, but also raising major portions of 127 in the vicinity of both culverts. So that north culvert, they're going to raise the road for close to 4/10 of a mile, which is pretty much the entire low-lying area. And the south is going to be another 1/4 mile project. So both of those are sort of going to be happening. There is a public hearing that's scheduled for this fall, and I'll keep the group sort of in the loop. When that gets scheduled, they're supposed to let me know as soon as they get it scheduled. So I'm not sure how they do their public announcements on public hearings, but I would assume it would go to the ACRC website and get posted, that way through the town website. So
I
but
think
basically,
if you would,
looking at Jim, go ahead.
just saying, if you inform Allison and Eloise, they'll keep an eye out for it and let us know when the hearings come. They're usually pretty good on that. Okay.
Thanks, Tom.
Is this just for state roads, not for town roads?
No, it's the MPI, which is the Municipal Planning Initiative, does have some funding for towns to do some of their own infrastructure projects. Jody, I know I asked about screen sharing. I don't know, now that you are the host, maybe you can let me do that. And it says it's disabled, so. And so I can't tell what you're saying.
Fun. Let's see if I can. Yeah. So next time I'll try to get this correct, but
that's all right. We'll just skip the screen sharing and I'll just talk our way through it. It sounds to me like we are already eligible ARCR to apply for an MPI funding plan. The one thing I wanted to screen share, though, is that there is a significant local match required. Anywhere from 30–50% of the project cost. There are some ways to fund then the local match, but it sounds like we got to get sort of into the weeds on that. So my recommendation to the group is that we go ahead and for an MPI grant. And I mean, there's no harm in starting the project. And, you know, if we get down or we can't get the match, then I don't think anything's lost by starting. So that's the short version on funding some of the local projects. And I guess what I'd be willing to do is to sign up with the road commission and work with, I believe his name is John Bradley Woods. Sounds like he's game to be involved in the process. So I guess I'm volunteering to go ahead and do that with him, and also maybe with Jenna's help in you know, sort of formally applying to that program. So so beyond that, those are the two. Oh, go ahead, Jody.
You have town roads that you're prioritizing, Dan?
Oh yeah, sorry. So he identified, and I have to look at my the screen I was going to share. So give me a minute here. He was going to focus on Spinney Mill Road, which he says floods regularly, but it was raised a few years ago, so emergency vehicles evidently can still flood. Indian Rest Road floods at the low point, which most people know. You can always go, there's two ways in and out of it. And then lastly, he identified Sorois. Is that how you say it? Sorois Road?
That's correct. Sorois has both
That
a
should be
culvert that's out currently and gets flooded.
So sorry, I've lost my link here.
So the state would, because it's a state road 127, we would not have to match any funds for raising the road through the marsh. But these are auxiliary roads that in town that are not state roads that we know have flooding. Those are the ones that we would apply for grants for matching grant money?
Evidently, that is the case, yes. The Route 120, the Route 127 project, I believe, is fully state funded.
Yeah, I was on another meeting and also heard that the municipal grants are tricky. So Dan, thank you for agreeing to do it. And I would say that probably the Sorois Road are the ones that I know. I'm talking to Jim Stump and John, both. Those are probably the two that might be most worthy. Now the Sorois Road might be impacted by the 127 project as well. So that would be interesting to have a conversation with MDOT about how they're planning on, if they're raising the road there, it's going to be, you know, the Sorois Road has got to be probably part.
Is the Sorois Road, does that come in by the north culvert, the north end of the island?
Yes. Yes, it's at the north end of the flood zone there.
Is that a private road or a town-owned road? Okay. So that's all I have on the transportation infrastructure topic for this evening.
And thank you so much. working on that. If I can be of any help, let me know. Being a Spinney Mill Road resident. Thank you. Okay. We now have a great discussion about hydrology and wells, and Karen, you're gonna head that up, and I look forward to hearing what you have to say.
All right, thanks. So I would just like to take a few minutes to summarize and report from the meeting that we had 2 weeks ago with Melissa Ellen Dumas from the Oak Ridge National Laboratory. A couple of people from the resilience group and a couple of residents from Arousik were able to participate, and it was recorded and it's available on our Google Drive. I got in touch with Melissa because I saw a study that she had done in 2015 when Arousik was part of the partnership program, getting into the partnership. That's how I saw the article, and so I reached out to her, and she was very responsive to talk with us. A study that she did in 2015 was on Great Island in Harpswell. She and another person together, they worked on this to assess the aquifer vulnerability to saltwater intrusion driven by climate change. And the study finds that recharge rate has a more significant effect on saltwater, freshwater interface depth, so saltwater intrusion in the end, than that of projected sea level rise. And in her study in 2015, the census data was supporting a decrease in population. So that would be the quick summary of that study from 2015. Melissa offered to us to guide a student, to supervise a student, to do a similar study for Arousik at no cost to the town. And it would be done over this coming summer between May and August. So a very short timeline. And I think that's maybe one of the benefits of if we decide we would like to go ahead with that. I've been in email contact with her. I've heard from Ken HT here in Arousik. Dan has helped out, Karen Robbins, trying to figure out what would benefit us the most, because we feel that we probably know what the study is going to tell us, but Arousik does not have a good well database. There is the main geological survey that shows 105 wells in Arousik, and there is a 1988 well survey that was done as part of the comprehensive plan that lists 90 wells, 90. The two groups are not completely identical, but we don't know how they overlap. And when I looked at the tax map, I saw about 270 buildings that are taxed. So maybe we have as many wells, maybe there are some dwellings that are supplied by one well for two houses together. Those are things we might want to find out. And so we could ask the student to assimilate all available data, to identify incompletions and data conflicts, and make recommendations for on-the-ground acquisition of the data that we might want to use in a future study that might be more specific, more detailed, have more parameter in such a way that individual homeowners might benefit from it, but that would be a future project that would not be covered this summer. We did mention the new law to her, the LD 2003, which will allow property owners to add an accessory dwelling units to their properties or to their dwellings, and that we are wondering whether that means that there will be a population increase, which may not be reflected in the census data that she's going to use. And she was very open to considering such an influence. the study would be a modeling study. So it uses data. It's a computer program basically. It would use ModFlow as computer program, if I understood it correctly. And that's the area that Melissa has funding for. So that's the study we would be we would get from her at no cost. I think that's where we have to adjust to what she can offer. And the benefits to me, at the last year's community workshop, we clearly heard that after 127, well water was one of the important topics in the community. Residents were concerned about salt water intrusion and depletion of wells. And if we can include the data assimilation, then we would really gain information about where wells are in Arousig. Of course, it's voluntary. We could use a survey to do that. Westport is doing it right now, so we could kind of copy that, and we could see how we can get it out there. I think that might be the challenge, that we don't have funds to mail it to each property owner, but I'm sure we'll find a solution for that. So improving the town well database seems a huge benefit to me. And then we could present the results at the workshop in September, which also I think will help engage the community, and it shows that we're listening and that we're trying to find solutions, or at least gather more information. And it might inform the handbook, which then can explain or make it easier for property owners to understand how they can protect their wells. Through all the reading and the conversations with Ken, I learned that most of the recharge actually happens around your well. Maybe 100 meters around the well is, or 100 yards, is where most of that happens, unless your fracture lines come from far away. But apparently that's very, very important here. And then, of course, then there was another thought that I had, whether an Arousig high school student might want to help with the data collection here on the ground. Dan has some ideas about that. Ken does. Mike Loviska is here today because he's interested in the topic. I'm not sure exactly how Mike could help. I don't think that the student would come up here from Tennessee, so we would have to try and help with the data collection for the wellheads, but I think it's doable over the next 4 months. So that was my presentation. Thank you for the time that you gave me. And are there any questions that I can help with, or comments at this time?
Just in terms of the data collection problem, Karen, who's responsible for approving wells? I assume it's the code enforcement officer. Is that right?
I don't think that there is an approval necessary. The well driller comes and basically asks, where would you like your well drilled? And that's where they go down, and then depending on—
Really? Because we certainly need approval for septics.
Yeah, that's much more involved. Yes, you're right. You need a perk test, and Dan knows a lot about that. He's done that in New Hampshire. So we have specialists here among us.
Because my question was, because when we got our plot map, I cannot actually tell. I think our well is a common well with 2 or 3 houses. I don't know from the map. It's not absolutely clear. So, I mean, I can talk to the neighbors, you know, and where the hell are you getting your water from? Is it coming from my well? But we'll have to see.
Do you think that most people know where their wells are?
You've usually got a standpipe out in your yard somewhere. And if you call the well driller, I mean, if you have a problem, they'll find it. There's no doubt about it. There's usually a fairly clear large, so 3-4 inch pipe with a cap on it.
Okay, I'm looking at mine right now, out the window. But the reason I'm asking this is because one of the things we did want to include in the handbook, if we can, is a map with a location, particularly of wells that could be more likely to have the intrusion of the salt water in their well water. And if we don't have any kind of a database, or if people, unless we send out a form to everybody and ask them to fill it out and tell us where their well is, it's going to be hard to do that.
Yeah, go ahead, Karen.
One of the generalizations that is apparent from other studies is that deeper wells closer to shore are more susceptible to saltwater intrusion.
Right.
And
Yeah.
the survey, if we could send it out, would have questions like that. Where's the location and so forth. And if someone would like help with that, then Dan has identified an app that allows us to take a picture and get the GPS data and the elevation of the well. So it sounds like that is something we could do. And I honestly, I don't expect that every homeowner is going to respond, but
Right.
we could add 40 wells or so to our database. I think that would already
help.
a success.
Okay.
Create zones on a map too, like these are the, like if your house and or well are in this area, you are in greater risk of saltwater intrusion. So you'd have like almost red, orange, yellow kind of thing.
I actually, Jesse, think that's a better idea than targeting specific land, not targeting, but identifying landowners' wells that may be susceptible, just sort of a colored map where, you know, with, you know, scientifically, maybe from Maine Geological Survey or maybe from Melissa, showing where the more vulnerable areas of our island are. You know, and it's whether your well's in there or not, you can look at that map and then say, oh, my well is in there or it's not in there. Might be a helpful thing for the handbook. I'm also, I mean, Pam and I were talking about, you know, if one of the things we want is the location of every well, and I think maybe septic system, I don't know, because those failure of those are a problem as well. We're still trying to figure out if our student, Bowdoin student who's working on the handbook, might have some hours that Camille could devote to this. That might be helpful. The key is what process is going to be the most efficient and successful for getting that information, whether it's, you know, there's a mapping part, looking at the database Karen identified that we have and seeing where the houses are that are missing and then looking at those, or that's going to take somebody supervising that aspect of that work for whoever does it.
You know, as you're talking, Jody, I'm just thinking, because I've got to have a meeting with Camille to put our schedule together. It seems to me that if we did have a map, just a geographical map, and we colored the areas next most close to the water, to the ocean or the river, with a bright orange or red, and moved inland, and she could do some sort of a graphic that said, take a look at this. If your well is in this area, this is what you need to do. And then have the steps of what they would need to do. And that looks to me like a good way to handle it in the handbook.
Yeah, and I'm still trying to figure out, Karen, you know, completing the database and the value of that in the well database. Can you speak to that a little bit more again? I was trying to take notes, but maybe I didn't hear it. Could you speak to that? Benefit of having all
I can try, and maybe Dan or Jack can help out if I'm missing something. So my understanding, when you go on the Maine Geological Survey, you find a map of Arousik and you find 105 dots. And some of the dots have information of when was the well drilled, how deep is it, how many veins, how much yield, and so forth. Others are just dots, and everything is just an estimate or hearsay kind of thing. So lots of different, 105 different wells on the main geological survey. And then I have not seen the complete 1988 survey, but I think it was done very well from what I heard from Karen Robbins. And so that could be used, overlaid on that map so that we can see which wells are identified. There's addresses associated with the names and so forth. And then we could do a survey and we could ask additional homeowners, and we could either send it out town-wide, or we could first identify whose well is not identified yet, and then address, send an email or send a letter or get in touch with those specific landowners. And I think this would be helpful in the future for a more detailed study if the town wants to do that. It will not influence much the outcome of this summer study. That's my understanding.
Do you think it's worth asking in a survey whether people's wells ever are adequate, whether they ever run dry? Or
I would suggest that we use the Westport survey and or very, very closely use that as our guideline, and it is asking for changes in taste and whether there are summers when it was dry, when they couldn't get enough water, etc. And so then the homeowner could answer those questions. And they in Westport, they have also realized that they only have maybe half of the wells, that they know only about half of the wells that they have in town. And they are hoping that with this, they can identify wells with owners who will allow them to do regular testing over the coming years to see the changes. So that is another aspect of that.
Yeah, I think the Westport survey, even with the main geological survey and the 1988 survey, to sort of send out that survey would be really helpful. Something similar to that. Let me just ask one more question, Karen, is do you have a sense from looking at the total number of households, just approximately how many households where we have no data on the wells?
Well, I haven't seen the 1988, but according to Karen Robbins, maybe there is, or maybe my feeling is that maybe we would identify 30 additional wells from that. So then maybe we have 135 or 140. And I think the town probably has a total of 250 or 270. So we're still maybe at 60% if we combine the two.
Karen, the other thing that Karen had mentioned, and I guess we're out at locations doing mapping and that sort of thing, is whether or not we try to do a sample of each well while we're there. Seems to be it would be the right time to do just a chemistry sample. You know, we don't have to be doing bacteria, but it would be a good time to find out if there's already some salt, you know, high sodium concentrations in some wells. I'm not sure, but I would think they would.
I think we may not have funding for that. Yeah, and I think that would need a student on the ground. So maybe that could be next year's or in a future study. But I like the idea a lot. Maybe individual homeowners would be interested to do something like that. I would think that we have need a subcommittee who works out those specifics. I just feel that if we don't have the funds allotted yet, then we should not take on something that we can't finance.
My
I'd like
understanding is
sense
that
into this,
quite
if
a few
if you wouldn't
people have
mind.
water treatment systems, and they get it tested every couple of years. So there might be a lot of that being done already, that data is available, which we have to
That's
talk to
true.
people.
Yeah.
I'd like to make a couple of thoughts on the table here for you. First of all, if we do the study, I guess we should go into it wide-eyed and knowing what we're going to get from it and what we probably won't get from it. We're really not going to know a lot more than we know now. We may find a few more wells. I mean, in generalities, we know that wells within 200 feet of the river is likely to get more opportunity for saltwater intrusion than one that's further inland, but that's no guarantee. So we know that. We know a lot of generalities, which could be part of what I'd call the educational package that we could give to people, because a lot of folks don't know what wells are and how they work. Matter of fact, most people, not from my experience from doing home inspections, most people don't know they should have their well tested several times a decade, because it changes. A lot of people don't know that in the old days, you just put a wellhead in and it would just be a few inches above ground. But today's code requires the standpipe to be up, almost 3 feet above ground. And that's to prevent contamination from groundwater, surface water from getting into the well. A lot of people don't know that. And so most people, if they have that shorter standpipe, it's recommended they raise it up with an added piece of pipe. The second thing is, from that study that we saw from the Harpswell area, one of the conclusions that I saw was that our problems that we're facing is, are we going to protect our extraction rate out of the water? Because that's a major influence of affecting saltwater intrusion. And of course, extraction rates depend on two primary things. One is the density of population, how many people are drawing from that well area. And one of the things that could have an impact on that, of course, is this ADU laws that are being passed by the Augusta that could have a major influence on Arousik if ADU units are showing up on various pieces of property on the town. You could literally, I wouldn't say double, but you could increase significantly the number of wells in the town if people start building houses, in-law apartments, or whatever else that currently are not allowed by code. And the town does not have much influence on affecting that law because the state dictates it. So whether the town wants it or not. So if we had this study and we show the vulnerability we may have, it might give us some influence with arguing with the state that we can't have the strict ADU compliance that they may pass. Just a thought, but I don't know how that's going to, nobody knows how it's going to work, but it's something that we should be concerned about. Though that could have an impact on the extraction rate of wells on this island. The idea of one of the things that will affect the wells in the future, of course, is the recharge, how much rainfall we're going to get. And so far, all the data that I've seen is that that's probably not going to be a problem because we're going to probably, as opposed to some parts of the country, have an average rainfall that will be sufficient for our needs in the future. A lot of parts of the country don't have that luxury, you might say. So that's, it appears to me that our wells are in pretty good shape on the island. I mean, there's going to be some exceptions for sure. Some people already have problems with their well, but in general, I think wells that are properly drilled and protected will probably be okay in the future. So that's not the biggest concern I have. I think it's future extraction rates of density of population that we should be most concerned. And we should give that ammunition to the selectmen so that they could, when they look in the future, can make informed decisions of how, what kind of acreage is necessary to support wells and who can have building permits and who cannot. And I think that's going to be the big issue. Yes, Judy.
How do we determine the carrying capacity of our wells? Is that a possibility even? I mean, I don't know the answer to that.
You're not going to get it from a hydrology study. It's not going to give you that at all. You're going to have to do detailed study, quantity studies from, well driller have to do that, and it's not cheap to do that.
Well, I'm just saying if I'm just sort of playing devil's advocate here, Jack, with, we don't want any more ADUs because of our wells, but you can't just, and we're gonna have a lot of rainfall, which is more important in terms of saltwater intrusion. I'm just gonna question a little bit about how we can use or if wells are really the nut for limiting ADUs or not. I don't know if we can scientifically say that or not. I don't know.
And you're certainly not going to get that from the hydrology study that we do.
No, I know.
That's not going to give you that kind of information.
I'm just going the next level. I know people are concerned about the accessory dwelling units, but I don't know if I'm just not sure that that's scientifically we're going to use that to stop development necessarily. I don't know.
I wonder
No,
if
I think you're making a good point. There is not going to be that kind of data available.
Okay, Jennifer?
I was going to say, I think there was money allocated for helping municipalities in adapting to the new ADU requirement, or just the new, it's not just the ADUs, the whole housing expansion. It's desperately needed. People can't find places to live. State's trying to find solutions. That's what they came up with. But there is, I believe, money allocated to help municipalities to adapt. And it might be worth looking into whether we can partially fund this, a study about our well capacity with help from the state. I don't know the answer, but I can volunteer to look into that.
See, one of the things I think should be done with this ADU thing is that the burden of whether that well can support another unit is the burden should be on the property owner who's going to have their property improved because they can have another unit on it. So the property owner should spend the money to test their well to see if the proper quantities of water coming out of that well to support a secondary unit. It shouldn't be on the entire island, because you're never going to be able to do that for the entire island.
We're getting a little long time. I'm just going to get us back. This is a very important thing, but getting back to Karen's sort of, question is this study that Melissa is offering for free something that we think will be valuable? Yes or no? And if not, are there other things that we should do? For example, the Westport survey to all well owners. Did I capture that, Karen?
I would probably recommend to the group that we use the Westport Island survey, and I'm talking about the letter that went out to the property owners, to gather more information and to focus, if we decide we're going to do Melissa's study with the student this summer, to see as the biggest benefit that we are going to improve our well database. And the study is going to confirm some of the generalities that Jack mentioned. I'm pretty sure of that as well. But if Melissa uses the population shift data, and if we play with that when it's modeled, then I think we will get an impression of how that might affect Arousic's well water overall. But it is not going to be a geological study. It's not going to measure what the capacity is. All of that is true. It would be a first step, the focus on improving the well base, the well database, and learning a little bit about increased population pressure on our wells.
I think Arousic actually has experienced a decrease in population in the last 20 years. Over the time I've lived here, I'm pretty sure the numbers have gone down.
I think in the comprehensive plan from 89 mentions, I think 457, and the latest number I had heard was 477. So this is 35 years later, somewhere in that range. Yeah. I think the census data would probably say it's going down, but the census data does not take in consideration the ADU law.
I also got the sense that more people moved here over the last couple of years.
Yeah, that might be because the last number I heard, it was 420. So, so maybe we've gained 50 people. I didn't even know.
So what's the mood? What is the, should we vote on it? Should we postpone it? That probably wouldn't be fair because Melissa needs to know one way or another, and the select board probably needs to be notified that we're planning to do this. The student would start in May, so this is April. The time is running out, so we have to make a decision with you. Tom.
I'd like to propose that we accept your presentation, essentially, having Melissa do the survey as a both information gathering or both data gathering, but also allowing us to sketch in more carefully what we're going to say to the people in the meeting. So that's important, I think, for both informing ourselves and informing the public. As far as the kind of studies that Jack's talking about, I think he's right that those are at the present time beyond our ken. And I would suggest that just as whenever you build, you have to have approval for your septic tank, and the approval is based on the number of people in the house, actually the number of bedrooms, but so we could do the same thing with wells. So I'd say that's a separate issue at the current time.
So what I hear you saying is that you're suggesting that we accept Melissa's offer to have a student do the study here in Arousic as a first step towards a better understanding of our water situation. Is that right?
Yes. Now she's going beyond just number of wells, isn't she, Karen?
Yeah. She's going to try and help us understand different stresses on resources based on population changes. She is going to probably the study will be similar to what was done in Casco Bay. So it will take in consideration recharge rate. That would be the rain events, precipitation events. And there we have to remember that they will become more severe. So we're going to get more water when we get it, but there will be periods of drought. And the water that we get in such large amounts runs off for the most part. The recharge rate from these high precipitation events is somewhere between 1% and 15% only. 85% or more run off into the river. And let's see, recharge rate, sea level rise, and population shifts. Those were the three vulnerabilities that she was looking at.
I think those are certainly things we should know more about.
So the fact that it's free, and and it isn't very intrusive. And if we pair it with a Westport-like survey, I think that will give a lot of information to our residents. So I'm in favor of going forward with it as well, and along with a survey similar to Westport.
I think the problem of a Westport type survey, it'll be interesting to see what their rates are, return rates. But certainly on broadband, they've had a terrible time getting people to actually return any kind of survey. And it's been critical for them to know how people are getting cable into their houses, et cetera, et cetera. And short of going door to door, eyeballing it, that would be more work than it would yield. Maybe being too pessimistic there, but
Well,
We're not going to lose anything. That's my understanding. With
no,
this
that's true.
study, we're not going to lose anything. And if we do talk about it in our neighborhoods, maybe then we can convince a couple of property owners to send it back.
If also you could send with the survey this kind of sketch map that Pam was talking about of vulnerability areas. And if you're in this area, you may have problems. That may get people's attention, particularly from the vulnerable areas.
Okay.
I would also say that we could have it in two formats. One, a Survey Monkey online that might make it easy for folks as well.
Mhm.
Okay, and look for,
People often respond best if there's an incentive. I don't know if there's a way we can connect them to well testing when we also send the information and give them information about having their wells tested. So it's not just we're asking for something, but we're providing something as well.
yeah, I like that idea. Do we have two or three people who are willing to work on this project, the survey project?
I'm willing to work with other people on adjusting the Westport Island survey. I'm
I said
hoping,
I would help with communication, so I guess that would fall under this category.
I would guess that Karen Robbins would be interested in being involved to some degree.
right, she's already said that, and Ken has offered help. Mike Loviska, who stepped off again, is a computer person. He was interested to learn more about this topic. Dan has offered assistance. We'll have to see whether this is more than we can how much time we can put into it. Yeah. But I think sending out a survey and receiving results and hoping that the student will assimilate the data, I think that we can do.
I'm so excited about this, actually. I think this is a really great new project that won't cost a lot of money and will get a lot of people involved. So I think we have a decision sort of by consensus. Do people feel like we're all on the same page?
Mhm.
Okay, all right. Then I think what I'll try to do is I'll try to get in touch with the selectmen and let them know about this, that we're doing this, just to make sure that they don't have any objections that we're not aware of. Karen Robbins, in a conversation yesterday, thought that we don't necessarily have to have the Conservation Commission's approval. How do you feel about that, Jesse? Is that, can we go ahead? This is within our scope of our work.
Oh boy, can I sign a liability waiver? I
No.
mean, I have it in my notes to bring up at our next meeting anyway, just to share progress. But that would be my thinking.
I would just make sure Feeny knows that we're planning on doing it. I would just be in touch with her and tell her that this is the plan, and make sure she doesn't have any objections. If she doesn't, I don't think she will be good.
Yeah, okay.
Things start to move forward before our next meeting, then I'm assuming. Yeah, but you said May. Okay. Either way, I'll still bring it up at our next meeting.
You're muted.
We're running a little late, but that was a really important discussion. So we have, I'm going to move us along to port outs. And what I have is regional projects, grant opportunities. Jenna is needs another person on her committee, and I think Dan has offered to do at least for the MDOT stuff.
I'd be willing to do that. Thought I was on that, but
Oh,
off air, Jody.
pardon?
Jody, if you turn off your video, you're going in and out all the time. You could drop the load that you've got. Your internet probably isn't working very well, and you might get better audio that way.
Okay, sorry about that. Is this a little better?
Yes.
Great. And then communications, community meetings, education, and progress reports. We got a bit to go through here. Dan, do you have anything else to add about your regional projects? Okay. I think he's already talked a lot about the MDOT stuff. And we already talked about, let's talk about the community workshops a little bit. Jesse?
Your mic is off.
Me?
Dan, there you go.
No, mine was off. Jody, you had asked about other projects. I didn't know if Jack wanted to talk a little bit about municipal infrastructure around buildings. We had a meeting recently with the property committee, and he talked a little bit about some energy efficiency projects around the town.
Just to bring
town
people
hall.
up to date, the town apparently has decided to go ahead with putting a new heating system for town hall. So they're going to replace the furnace, and it's going to go in the budget that they're going to pass this coming spring. So that's coming down with or without our committee's influence on it in terms of money. So the town is going to be setting aside money to put a new furnace in. I don't know what it's going to be. They haven't decided on it. Could be a heat pump system. It could be something else. But that's going ahead. I'm not sure what they want to do with the fire barn. That they may want to put in a heat pump to feed the indirect heating out of the floor at the fire barn. And what they want to do with the little barn that has one of those monitor type of units, I'm not sure, but that is apparently going ahead as we speak. And those were two of the projects we were talking about. They also are going ahead with the putting EVs, solar panels up on the fire barn's roof to feed the fire barn. But keep in mind, in terms of those municipal buildings, they're on different meters. So no matter how many solar panels you put up on the fire barn, it's not going to be able to feed all the buildings in town because of the way our electrical system is built. They have to have separate kind of sources of power. So that's one of the things that are in consideration, how they're going to do that. Trying to think if there's any other projects that we're talking about.
Wait, did you say they're going to EV chargers at the town hall?
Yeah, there is a propane fired furnace in the basement of town hall, and they're going to replace that furnace. They think it's old and needs to be replaced. And they're probably going to replace it, my guess is, with some sort of an efficient heat pump system.
Right.
Propane driven. would be my guess, but I haven't seen the specs on it. They haven't even created the specs for it, and they haven't gone out to bid or anything like that.
No, I understand. I'm just saying, I thought you said EV chargers.
But then he corrected himself and said, I mean, solar panels.
Okay, thank you.
Jack, did you say the select?
The other thing to keep in mind,
with this?
if you're putting in efficient heating systems for a building like town hall, keep in mind that's a poorly insulated building. It's got water in the basement, which is putting moisture in the building. There's no insulation, as far as I know, in the walls of the town hall. And the insulation in the attic is spotty at best. So you're putting an efficient heating system into basically a barn that has no insulation package. But it gets worse, because if you don't just need insulation, you need to create a building envelope, as they describe it, that it doesn't allow moisture to pass into the walls, because if you don't, and you don't protect the inside of the building from the moisture that's in the basement, it'll rot out the walls. So what you have to do is you have to have a project to put the vapor barrier or something down in the basement to mitigate the moisture that's in the crawl space before you do anything with insulation.
Well, let me just stop you there for a minute, Jack, because we got a lot to get through. I don't want to go into too much details but I think the town hall might be a good project for a municipal infrastructure grant to get it up to par. So, but that's a little bit, something that we could talk about, but there are a lot of problems there. But I understand that there's a lot of issues there, but at least if they're gonna, at least it won't be propane going out the windows, it'll be electrical stuff. So, okay.
But I think Jack makes a really good point that maybe if it's possible to work with them, insulation might be the first thing to do, followed by more efficient heating. Or something to just, I don't know who has the authority or the connection to do that, but not a bad suggestion.
Jack, did you say the selectmen are moving forward with this?
Yes,
project?
as part, I had a breakfast with some of the townsfolk yesterday that have the inside track, you might say, what's going on. And one of the comments they told me, definitely the town is going ahead with that project. A new furnace system for town hall.
And
it will be in the budget that we all.
The state of Maine in the
spring.
Right.
Well, I think
The state of Maine has efficiency grant program for municipalities, so we should definitely be applying for that.
yeah, I think because there are municipal buildings that are getting revamped through this partnership stuff, so that's another opportunity.
And also, just to keep you advised of what's going on, is that the property committee is meeting with a statewide preservation society member. They're coming down to town hall to view the building, to give recommendations of how to preserve that, not only the history of the building, but the energy efficiency of the building, because there's questions of what should be done for the windows, and not to mention the building envelope I talked earlier about, and the crawl space to protect it from the moisture that's down there. So there's a lot of issues to be decided before we do anything.
Is there money in
That sound,
furnace system to also do some of the things you're describing, like the insulation, or even like those weather window inserts or something? Or is it strictly just for whatever the actual system is?
I think I missed the question.
No, it's just, you said that they're already going to be proposing as part of the budget installing this new heating system, and I was just wondering if it really does just include the heating system, or if it includes wiggle room at all for something like what you're describing, insulation, et cetera, to make it, you know, so you're not literally watching money out the window because you're heating a barn. That's all I was wondering.
As far as I know, it is just the heating system. No one's talking about the building envelope or the moisture in the basement or the windows that are leaked like a sieve. I mean, it's putting the cart before the horse kind of stuff going on. So I'm just bringing this to your attention.
Could I suggest that this is something that really is between the properties committee and the selectmen and not
Well,
our immediate concern?
I
I
totally
mean,
agree.
we can be supportive, but in terms of intervening here, we'd be an extra thumb or something.
Yeah, I have to agree with that at this point. Well, we've got, I'm just trying to.
Hi, Momo. Can I call you back in a few minutes? I'm on a Zoom
Oh my
meeting.
gosh.
Congratulations, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you.
Can you,
I'll call
can
you
you
right
mute
back.
her? You're the host.
I did, thank you. Oh, okay, I'm gonna move us along because I'm mindful of our time here. We spent a lot of time on the town hall. I want to talk a little bit about the workshops and who needs help in terms of, I mean, we've got a lot of time still. So just, you know, the workshop folks, what do you need from the committee, or do you have any updates? Jesse?
I mean, we haven't really talked about it beyond the date and sort of tossing around quick ideas in terms of potentially offering daycare. Not daycare, sorry, childcare. And unless I've missed something, I think that's where we are.
I love the childcare option. That's wonderful.
Yeah, it'd be nice to gauge interest because, you know, it is possible that it wouldn't make a difference in terms of other people coming, or, you know, that it's not needed. So that I'm wondering if there's a way to do that before we get too much further down the road, so to speak.
Maybe what we could do is, I mean, I don't know any babysitters, but if you know someone that you really like, maybe you could let that person know that that is the date that we're thinking about, and maybe a corner in the fire barn where the kids are, but the parents are in the same room, so that we don't get into the liability issue. Those kind of things we had talked about. Just to get our date in with that person, I'm suggesting.
Our babysitter is a senior, so she will be probably away at college at the time. That's my guess. Also losing our wonderful babysitter. But I will, because obviously we're going to need a new babysitter anyway. I'll ask around. I'm sure there are other good options. In fact, I think Dina's daughter may be old enough at this point. Bachman, we can put out some feelers.
Yeah, there's definitely some high school students like Charlie Ware and Jaden Schultz are two that I know of that are, you know, I think ninth graders.
Yeah, even a really responsible 13-year-old, because
oh yeah,
parents are going to be in the room. I mean, I think I started babysitting at like 12 or 13.
Yeah, they offer the babysitting course at 12. So yeah. Okay. Thank you, Jesse. Anything with, it sounds like Jennifer's offered to help with some communications surrounding the survey. Is there anything else you have to report on, Jennifer?
Sorry, no, I'm not ready to report on anything else tonight. Maybe next time I'll have news for you.
No, that's great. We have a couple articles in the Arrow that whenever that comes out. So that's thanks to Jesse,
That's out, Jody. That's
Okay.
out, Jody. And Jesse's article is in there, and we'll plan for another update in 3 months' time.
thank you. Okay, I'm just going to jump to education. Cam, and I think I muted you, but I'm trying to unmute you. Let's see
No,
if I.
she's muted.
There we go. There I go. I have just a small report. Jody and I interviewed 2 candidates for our Bowdoin student, both of whom were incredible young women from the environmental science department, came highly recommended. And, but we picked Camille, whose curriculum vitae is on the report. You can read it. She is amazing. She's had all kinds of experience working with public groups. When she was in high school, she worked with the school board as a liaison doing climate action and so forth with the school she was in. And she's very interested in the handbook. And the way we're going to operate is Shield will be available at the end of May, and she will be with us until the first part of September. And so my plan is actually Alicia and I are sharing this. Alicia is going to be her point person for scientific information that she needs. And I am going to be her day-to-day weekly project manager. So I will be meeting with her at the end of May. We'll develop an outline for the handbook. And then the idea is that the goal for the handbook is that it is accessible to every person who lives on the island. It's not going to be a scientific treatise, but rather a handbook that really points out to people who live here what climate change and its effect on us as islanders. And with probably an end up of a bullet point list of things that every single person can do to help mitigate climate change on the island. I think you'll all meet her because she will start coming to our regular monthly meetings. And I think you'll all enjoy her. She's full of enthusiasm. She's done all kinds of graphics that deal with climate change. She had stickers that she made. We think we're going to have her make stickers that we can give to everybody. And I was extraordinarily impressed with her. So that's sort of where my work is at this point.
Thank you, Pam.
Really fast, quick question. Just, is there a plan for her to have some sort of credit somewhere in that handbook? I'm just thinking as a college.
Oh, sure, of course.
I would have.
Good idea. Yeah. And we also have some fun, she's going to be getting it mostly laid out, but I've got funds for a person to finish it up with a professional layout. So just so you know. Okay, and then I did attend a couple community meetings. I sent the notes around for those that I did. Were other people involved in other workshops or meetings that they'd like to let us know about? Okay, if not, the last thing on our agenda is our progress report. It's due tomorrow or the next day. I'm not exactly sure. We have quarterly reports. We haven't spent any money, and I sent the report that I put together and Alicia reviewed it. But I think we're, doing pretty well in terms of moving it along. I just wanted to just highlight that. Karen.
And the progress report is very impressive. I like it a whole lot. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
My question was, as we are informing certain town committees, is that something we can share with the wider group?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. Awesome.
And I think it should be very public. So we can send it actually once it's all together to each committee. If we want, committee chair.
I actually would like to add to that conversation that we had earlier about the sign-up sheet. We have Jennifer here as a chair of one of the committees, and I would kind of like to find out how it is for a committee to have a liaison with the climate resilience group. I think it could come, it could be, there could be a misunderstanding about it, as far as us coming in and maybe interfering with some of the work that is being done. And that is something I would certainly want to avoid completely. I think if I was wanting to suggest that maybe Jody, you send out an email as the chair to all the committee chairs with the progress report and maybe with Jesse's article and from the last arrow that summarized what we were doing, and kind of let everybody know that we are available, but I want to avoid the impression that we are interfering and another entity that now starts to influence their business. And I was going to hope that Jennifer could speak to that.
I guess from my perspective, participating on this committee, well, one, I'm doing it because it's something that I personally care about. But also I feel like it's something that's relevant to the work that the planning board does, and that knowing what's being discussed here and knowing what's being planned or discussed at the planning board meetings helps me to have a more holistic view of how those things might intersect. And I'm perfectly comfortable sharing the discussions that this group has with the planning board where they're relevant. I don't think that this committee will interfere with the planning board's activities. It's more to inform. It's sort of how I'm viewing it. That seems reasonable. I mean, there are things like the ADU discussion we had earlier was interesting to me to just hear what's discussed here. I know we've been talking about it at the planning board, but there's nothing yet approved for town meeting, so I didn't want to bring it up until. But yeah, I think it's helpful to just to know how things are going to interrelate.
That's helpful, Jennifer. I just picking up on what Karen said, I also think that each of the committees will have valuable insights into what the action plan should include from their perspective that we might not be thinking about. And I'm thinking like the recycling committee. So when we give our report, we should be asking to, you know, that we're going to have an action plan, but it's not going to be complete when they see it. It's going to be an opportunity for them to add what we've missed because we don't have their, because they're not on this committee kind of thing. So it'll be important to send that kind of messaging out when we share information.
Yeah, being on this committee gives me a more direct opportunity to speak up if I think that there's going to be any kind of adverse or interference, but other committee chairs don't have that opportunity if they're not on this. So I think that's great to share the reporting out that way.
I'd like to make a suggestion regarding communication. I'd like to think about us maybe stealing the motto that the statewide climate resilience uses, the Maine can't wait. Why don't we change our motto to arouse it can't wait? Maybe that goes on our bumper stickers and our buttons on our sleeves. Arouse it can't wait gives a sense of urgency and make it a real thing just for our island. even though it affects the entire state, the whole program, but Arousing can't wait. And that gives people a feeling that we're in this all together. Anyway, just a thought.
That could be the title of our action plan.
Well, that's what I was thinking.
Okay,
I just was going to say, Jody, I also appreciated your comments earlier about having a scientific basis rather than making assumptions, like knowing what we're talking, knowing that that we're not just guessing about things, but that
I
there are
think,
things that are supported.
I feel both. Arousing is island of this beautiful island with 30% of it preserved already. And we're very lucky to live here, frankly, in my opinion. And there's a huge housing shortage. So there's got to be a balance here that we let newcomers in to the extent, but we do have to do it on a site. We can't just say, we don't want anybody, close the door behind us, so to speak, in my opinion, anyway. We have to be thoughtful and not knee-jerking in terms of that. So anyway, my 2 cents. Okay, I think that is the end of our agenda, and I literally had a hard time keeping up with the notes, so I'm going to have to rely on somebody to help me, and maybe Karen, can I ask you to help me a little bit to review my notes?
Definitely, and it always helps me when I view the recording, because then you are not distracted. All you do is listen to it and take notes. So as soon as you can send out the recording, then we can work together.
Awesome, thank you so much. Okay, I just love working with all of you. I'm sorry that the rocky start. Anyway, sorry for the rocky start. Hopefully be better next time. And let's talk a little bit quickly about our next meeting with Judy is in May. At that point, she's going to have a few of the sections already written that we've asked her to write. And she also wants to be sure that all of us, including the Conservation Commission, review the outline to make sure we haven't missed anything. So I really encourage you. I think I gave everybody a week, or maybe it was 2 weeks, but anyway, to add your comments, because Judy really wants those in order to keep the ball moving forward. So that's our next official meeting, is with Judy. Do people want to try to meet prior to that?
Do we have a date?
We do not. We could make one though.
And did you
When's the meeting with Judy?
Let me see. Hold on. I think we
Have anything here?
maybe I haven't set that out yet.
Okay.
Let me just
So
check.
you say that's in May?
It's going to be in May. Let me just check my email while I've got you here.
Probably. I think we should probably meet before then.
Okay.
That would be 2 months.
Yeah.
Meetings are important to keep us going.
I agree. We should meet in April.
Okay. And let's see. I guess this is a Thursday night. We've been doing either Wednesday or Thursday. Does it matter to folks?
Nope.
Okay.
That would put us in probably the 26th or 27th, would be 4 weeks from today.
Okay.
My vote would be the 27th. If I'll be listening to others.
Let's do the 27th then.
Okay.
I can't. Yeah,
7th.
I'll be missing that meeting. So
Does the
I
20,
can do the 26th. I can do the 26th, but not 27. So
I can make the 26th work.
Okay. Do the 26th, and did people like, I'll do the same thing about the agenda to ask people's input on what they want on the agenda through the Google Docs. I think that was helpful to me. Did that work, folks? Is that the birthday boy over there, Jesse?
The birthday boy, he turned 4 yesterday.
Oh my gosh.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. And I'll get you the dates for the meeting with Judy. For some reason, I've got to.
Can we please be done?
Then I move to adjourn. Adjourn.
So she I think May 17th is the date. Does that work for folks? With Judy?
I'm sorry, what was
Say that again?
May 17th. She could do the 10th, the 17th, or the 31st.
What day of the week is that?
Wednesday?
Wednesday?
I'm flexible.
The 17th, does that work for folks?
Yep.
Okay, we've got a couple, we have our next 2 meeting dates set. With my appreciation. Thank you all so much. And Karen and I'll try to get the notes out quickly. And
Yes.
and then I'll work on getting the report out to the chairs of committees with the caveat that we're looking for input.
Yes, that's great. Thank you for that.
Good suggestion, Karen. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Dan, before you sign off, I'd be willing to on the roads and municipal grant things.
Wonderful,
I'm
Tom.
gonna. Yeah, I'll
Pardon?
be reaching out to Jenny. What's that?
I'd be willing to work on the roads and the municipal grants you talked about. What I already
Okay.
was, but
We'll get together. We'll get together with Jenna on that pretty quick here then. Okay.
okay.
Everyone.
Bye.